my grave without a name, that earth may swallow up my shame.
Aleister Crowley, the man who called himself the Beast 666, black magician, drug fiend, sex addict, and traitor to the British people.
I want none of your faint approval or faint dispraise. To hell with Christianity, rationalism, Buddhism. I want blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything bad or good, but strong.
In 1920, Aleister Crowley founded a commune in Sicily to practice the beliefs that he said would one day sweep away Christianity and free men from all restriction and repression. 3 years later, Mussolini deported Crowley and his followers from Sicily after reports of human and animal sacrifice and unimaginable sexual depravity caused an international scandal. The British press called Crowley the wickedest man in the world.
I have exposed myself to every form of disease, accident, and violence. I have driven myself to delight in dirty and disgusting debauches, and to devour human excrements and human flesh. I have mastered every mode of my mind, and made myself a morality more severe than any other in the world. 1,000 years from now, the world will be sitting in the sunset of Crowleyanity.
The thing about Crowley was doing everything to absolute excess, pushing yourself to the absolute limit so you know at least where your limits are. So if you're going to do something that's depraved, you do something which is extremely depraved that even you feel disgusted at, and then try to learn to enjoy it.
Aleister Crowley declared the death of Christianity. He was to be the new Messiah that would replace the pallid dead Christ.
I believe he was the real thing. He had given himself under demonic control. He was evil.
Very clever. A genius, for God's sake. A raving genius, you know. In a world of little tiny people, this crowd is saying, my God, why are you so unhappy? You want to make love? Well, make love, for Christ's sake. You want to take drugs? You want to expand your consciousness? Please do it.
Since his death in 1947, Crowley has become an icon of rebellion. The Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page have all been influenced by his message of freedom. He continues to be a key figure in the occult and is a focus for those engaged in the battle between good and evil. This was a battle that was to play a crucial part in Crowley's childhood. Aleister Crowley was born in 1875 into a wealthy brewing family. It was the height of the Victorian era, and his devoutly religious parents constantly warned him about the dangers of temptation and the terrible consequences of sin.
His family were members of the Plymouth Brethren sect. Now, the Plymouth Brethren were radical Protestants. You might even say pathologically anti-pleasure. They believed in the literal truth of the Bible. This included in particular the book of Revelations, which is a constant echo throughout Crowley's imagination, his theology, if you want to call it that. He seems to have been devoted to his father. They used to travel the country together while his father preached in a fairly unorthodox fashion.
Aleister was inspired by his father's evangelizing, and his earliest ambition was to follow him and become a crusader for Christ. Then something happened that completely shattered his world. Crowley's father died suddenly, leaving Aleister, who was still only a boy of 11, bereft. His sorrow turned to anger. He grew to hate his mother, the church, and the pious tutors she employed to school him.
Crowley became increasingly rebellious. He set about attacking the thing which had made his childhood such a misery.
I had arrived at the conclusion that the Plymouth Brethren were an exceptionally detestable crew. I wanted sin, a supreme spiritual sin, but hadn't the slightest idea how to go about it.
He really could not bear his mother, and the first opportunity, when he was a teenager, he had the maid on his mother's bed, and obviously felt that this was a kind of revenge. He developed a tremendous state of resentment about his family and all the family background. And so, from the beginning, you see, Crowley sort of had a pretty good kind of background in revolt.
Crowley failed to distinguish himself during his school days, apart from getting expelled from Tunbridge after catching gonorrhea from a prostitute. At Cambridge, Crowley finally broke free from the shackles of his upbringing. He published his own poetry, revealing a rapidly developing obsession with sex.
When Celia comes, 'tis earthquake's hour. The bed vibrates like kettle drums. It is a grand display of power when Celia comes. When Celia farts, my hasty nose sniffs up the fragrance of her parts. Shamed are the violets and the rose when Celia farts.
Crowley's poetry was so pornographic that he would have been prosecuted for obscenity had he not taken the precaution of publishing it abroad under a false name.
Crowley had the natural appetite for sex you might expect from someone in their adolescence. There was something different about Crowley, though, I think. There was almost, he was developing a compulsion. Part of that compulsion seemed to be a compulsion towards sin, a form of blasphemy, a form of spitting in the eye of the Christian Church.
It was at Cambridge that Crowley first became fascinated with magic and the occult. He heard that there were secret societies whose members practiced dark and forbidden rituals. Crowley was intrigued and was desperate to access this hidden world. At the age of 21, a large trust fund freed him from any financial worries. He decided to leave Cambridge to pursue his quest to become a black magician. After 2 years of searching, he finally found what he was looking for. The Golden Dawn was a secret society dedicated to the study and practice of the occult. Its exclusive upper-class membership included many famous artists and intellectuals of the day.
He discovers the Golden Dawn. It's from here on, really, that he feels he's really onto something. This is something brand new, it's fresh. Bram Stoker is involved, Yeats is involved, the sort of literary sort of society lot. He wants to be part of that as well. And he rapidly rises through the magical grades like nobody else has gone through them before. He seems to take to this literally like a fish to water. This seems to be his vocation.
For Crowley, who was now referring to himself as the Beast 666, the Golden Dawn turned out to be a bitter disappointment. He thought that they were playing at magic and tried to take the society over. He clashed with the poet W.B. Yeats, who was a prominent member, calling him a lank, dishevelled demonologist.
This was the real major step for Crowley when he thought that he was leaving behind the Golden Dawn and all its sort of milk and water magic and moving into the world of sort of real magic. And he was perfectly willing to take on black magic. He was willing to use any forces that he possibly could, that he could control.
Crowley decided to perform the Abra Melon, a black magic ritual that no magician had dared undertake for centuries.
Crowley's so dedicated to performing the Abra Melon ritual that he actually goes to the length of seeking out and finding the perfect place and buying a house to do the actual ritual in. Nothing else, just actually to do this ritual. And it's in Loch Ness, Boleskine House. This is such an extreme thing to do. This is not a game. I think he's trying to break down, he's trying to push further than anyone else has been before. At the moment his yardstick is the Golden Dawn, so he's already shattering that completely.
The Abramelin dates back to the 14th century. The aim of the 6-month ritual is to master demons, but it was considered extremely dangerous. If the ritual went wrong, it was believed that evil spirits could be set loose and take possession of the magician.
The Abramelin ceremony has an introduction which states that nobody should perform this ceremony. Red rag to a bull with Aleister. Crowley, at a time when he did it, had a lot of determination to delve as deep as he could into the occult. He certainly did do partially the Abramelin ceremony in the house, which is to do with conjuring up one's guardian angel. But in order to do that, you've got to release a lot of other spirits of one sort or another. Even in broad daylight, the room he was working in became almost pitch dark, and he had to light candles and this sort of thing to continue what he was about.
Deep-mouthed from their thrones, deep-seated, the choirs of the eons declare the last of the demons. The kingdom is thine to inherit. What I...
The man, actually, I don't think, mixed a great deal with the locals, but they knew what he was about. Crowley never made any secrets about the sort of individual that he was. And the north of Scotland being the way it is, there's still some sort of healthy superstitions floating about. And, yeah, I mean, there were some people who wouldn't even walk past this place. I have a healthy respect for what the occult can do and how it can really muck up your life.
Crowley, in his absolutely typical way, broke off the ritual. He just couldn't be bothered to go on, because it really is pretty exhausting, you know, living on bread and water and getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning with invocations and all kinds of things. It's nothing so much as like being a monk, only harder. And so Crowley gave it up. If you do that kind of thing, you get possessed, in a certain sense. Things get inside you and use you for their purposes.